We're going to introduce you to what we're calling the Distributed Ledger Foundation. It's a new foundation that has two jobs. It is to secure the work that is being done right now to help better align these two code bases so that we can build on what's built. The other thing that it will do is to begin to inform governments as a private sector-led conversation about what regulation should look like, not only on K Street, but also in Beijing, also in Singapore and in London. If we get it right, if we understand governance and define it in a new way, we can inform governments. So let's take this approach. If we want to do this new foundation, for sure it has to be nonprofit. It must be global because the internet is not a single jurisdiction phenomenon. And it has to move across industries. Most importantly, this approach has to be inclusive and it has to be technology agnostic.
So we want to be intentionally international and consult globally. So we're a global organization, as Don mentioned. We want to collaborate across the whole of the industry. There are many, many people already doing great work in this field, whether they're academics, whether they're lawyers, whether they're companies, building the technologies of the future, and we want to include everybody under this new umbrella. And if we can do both those things simultaneously, we'll end up with this private sector-led public-private partnership, which I think will give us a very strong foundation to influence public decision-making. And that's key because policymakers, regulators, and legislators are getting much more interested in these technologies, but there's still a huge lack of understanding about what they actually are. And definitions are important. And if we're going to trust this new trust layer of the internet, these policymakers need to strike the right balance between, on the one hand, not stifling innovation, but on the other, also safeguarding the public interest.
The promise of distributed ledger technology is that it provides for trust. Trust as expressed in trusted transactions that increasingly are the heartbeat of financial centers in London and in Hong Kong and in New York. And those trusted transactions are what we all have in common. We want to be able to enable trusted global transactions at a very high velocity with a great variety of cross-sector use cases. And lastly, with a volume that is really unprecedented. So the volume of transaction, the variety of transactions, and the velocity, the speed of that is really what this is all about. So we're in the trusted transaction business. And in order to do that, we really need to kind of align the two code sets. The computer code, the tool set that is expressed in lines of code, whether that's a smart contract or the other associated technical makeup of blockchain and distributed systems, we have to align that code set with a legal code set. How governance is expressed in law and regulation and bylaws and in the governance of these systems. It's only when we align those two code sets, in my view, that we can truly exploit the value of this amazing new technology in ways that we can hold accountable, in ways that lawyers can account for, in ways that lawyers and legislators and policymakers can build into law.
A blockchain to me is a permissionless distributed ledger. Distributed ledgers, when I hear them most often, are typically a permissioned but shared ledger or database. And so when I think about how distributed ledgers are being used, whether that's both for specific use cases or as platforms, what I think about is what is the effect of now reintroducing a legal framework, a political system that's not about software code but legal code. What is the effect of introducing that into a shared database, and how does that affect incentives, and how does that affect governance? And so, is it actually going to improve the value proposition of the Bitcoin blockchain or Ethereum or smart contracts, or is it just going to reintroduce the preconditions for regulatory capture and moral hazard? And so, how do you take some of the ethos around individual liberty and building a more secure and accessible transaction environment, how do you take that ethos, and now introduce that into a distributed ledger that's probably going to have some sort of political governance attached to it?
There's been a lot of speculation about how blockchain and other types of architectures of technology and combinations of technology might help to serve existing business interests and to grow new value propositions. And I think what's starting to happen through the Distributed Ledger Foundation is a recognition that there are a variety of areas that we need new metrics in, need new concepts and structures of thinking about. Not that we necessarily need new technology for the things, but new ways of using the technology and deploying the technology so that you can start to gauge threat and vulnerability, start to have an understanding of risk, but also start to have an understanding of when you don't have risk, and so people can start to understand when systems can be trusted more.
People would not buy hot dogs from a hot dog stand if they didn't trust that when they handed over their $2, they would receive a hot dog in exchange. And right now, I feel as if the technology is spinning forward and trying to accomplish a great deal, and I feel as if it's outdistancing the things that permit its use to gain trust and acceptance. And I think that there's a lot to be done.
The existing infrastructure that supports regulatory environments for banking are extremely antiquated. So it's taken an enormous amount of energy to help to educate regulators, government departments, and indeed those in the peripheral industries, such as lawyers, accountants, corporate services providers. That in itself has taken nearly 2 years.
The legal issues around compliance with laws in various countries, the legal issues around liability if something goes wrong, the recently uncovered problems with security, the new requirements around privacy compliance. All these kind of things are bringing incredible challenges to the adoption of this technology. And we got that debate started in Palo Alto, and it's just a start. What we hope to do is then build on the insights and the great discussion points that came out of the session, and build on those with other folks from around the world, so that by the end of this year, we maybe have a framework for how do we build the kind of trust in these kind of environments that corporates are going to need to be able to engage with it.
So I think what we saw in Palo Alto was that it's really interesting when you can bring together faculty and researchers and practitioners from a variety of different backgrounds. We had folks from the Stanford Complexity Group. We had a professor who was actually in synthetic biology, and yet he taught a bioengineering class around blockchain and its potential opportunities from the perspective of his sort of research into complex biological processes, and yet the ways in which the rules of biology worked could, in a sense, be compared to the ways in which these emerging distributed ledger ecosystems could work. And so I think that hopefully some of that interdisciplinary ethos and the different ways of looking at some of the issues involved will be picked up by the efforts in London and Singapore and Amsterdam and Sydney this year. And that inclusivity and that openness around how an organization like the Distributed Ledger Foundation can set itself up and then create standards around how these rules can flow down for other organizations that are looking to build similar kinds of legitimacy and trust. I think that is the key for what a Distributed Ledger Foundation can create. And that flows down into all the protocols and the standards that it's trying to bring together around identity and governance and smart contracts and these core components of what can really be this larger system for redefining what trust can be in the 21st century.
I think the regulators are very interested and focused on the technology and trying to understand it. I think there's still quite a bit of work to do to get them to appreciate the implications and the particular legal challenges and issues that arise as a result of the technology. The Distributed Ledger Foundation and other stakeholders in the sector really have a great role to play in educating policymakers, collaborating with them and other industry members to help drive education and also development of potential regulatory frameworks in the right way, in the right direction.
We're gathering here a lot of people from the financial sector, but also people in policy as it starts to move up the political agenda. So we're bringing together both the legal minds, but also the policymakers and the people working in finance.
I think there's a real realization there that when you apply governance models in a legal framework and back that up with enforcement cryptographically, you've got kind of the best of both worlds. And this is an industry that knows how to interoperate. So it's something that we're all on a journey together, and we're looking forward to the next chapter.
We're bringing a great group of people together who can do cross-industry and kind of inter-industry cooperation. So let's try and maybe take this forward and build some real-world kind of action points and some projects on the ground.
I think workshops like this are really useful in that they get a wide range of people to actually start talking. And we've had some great conversations on the panels this morning, trying to think about the real problems that we're trying to solve and the way that these technologies are going to interact with us.
So this is our foundation, the Distributed Ledger Foundation. We're about collaboration, consultation and partnership. And we need your membership, your ideas and your inputs into our future research, our future events, and we want this to be all about you. So we very much hope that you'll join us. I'm very proud to be a part of this. I would love you to be a part of it and be part of the future of this amazing technology.
This is the beginning of this worldwide consultation that this new organization that I lead, the Distributed Ledger Foundation, has embarked upon. There is also a piece that follows that, which is a collaboration with other like-minded organizations. So this is an invitation for the organizations that you represent to consider becoming a member of the Distributed Ledger Foundation. This is an invitation to the organizations that you are a part of to collaborate with the Distributed Ledger Foundation. Send me an email if you have a question. I'm Don at the distributedledgerfoundation.org, and I'd love to hear from you.
We haven't quite figured out how to get corporates buying in to these open distributed systems yet. There's a lot of challenges. And the chance to be a part of that, right at the heart of it, and bringing some great minds from around the world together to start to solve and address those things, I mean, why wouldn't I want to be involved?